and welcome to Coast Connections. On this episode, we're connecting with the Nature Trust of BC and their connection with the Brant Festival in Parksville, Qualicum area this year and past years as well. The Nature Trust has been around since 1971, and they're helping to turn the tide on the loss of habitat and species in the province of BC, and particularly here on Vancouver Island is what we'll talk about today. And they acquire ecologically sensitive land, and they have that in trust to conserve it and make sure that these habitats are not lost. So joining us tonight, we have two guests. We have Tom Reid, the Conservation Manager with the Nature Trust of BC.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Tom. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here tonight.
Oh, it's great to be here. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Lynn Brooks. Lynn is from the Arrowsmith Naturalists and also a volunteer with the Brant Festival. And thank you, Lynn, for all the birds that you've brought in today. We're really going to take flight here with our conversation. Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Here you go. So, Tom, you've been with the Nature Trust for about 18 years,
Yep.
since about 2000.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about how the Nature Trust comes to acquire these ecologically sensitive areas. What's the process involved?
It's a fairly complex process. We work to looking at where's the risk and rarity. So based on sensitive ecosystems, a lot of them on Vancouver Island are coastal lowlands, estuaries, wetlands, river riparian areas. And so once we've identified these properties or these large complexes, we'll do assessments of them in terms of what's their condition, do they provide a lot of quality habitat for fish and wildlife? And then also, is there public use and recreation and value there? But our first priority is looking at species risk and richness on these sites. And once we identify these locations, we look at, we have a process with our board of directors where we will rank a project, and it needs to go through an internal review process to our board of directors who will review it and then make the ultimate decision whether or not it's a property worth securing via donation or acquisition.
Mm-hmm. And I was looking on your website, Tom, and it said in the last almost 50 years, because you've been around for about 47 years, the Nature Trust has invested almost $100 million in about 170,000 acres of land in BC. That's quite significant.
Yeah, it is quite the large complex of properties, and we focused on ecologically rich areas of the province from the Peace region to the Rocky Mountain Trench, South Okanagan, the Lower Mainland, South Coast area, and then on Vancouver Island as well.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the projects on Vancouver Island here, Tom. The Englishman River Estuary is one of the ones that I know you're very involved with. Yeah,
it's one of the longest standing projects that the Nature Trust and their partners, other conservation groups, have been involved in. We own a significant portion of the Englishman River Estuary. We've acquired over the years large portions of the Englishman River main stem itself, all the way up to almost the Englishman River Falls Parks we've been involved in terms of acquisitions. There's covenants we've been assisted with and have helped secure, and we've also worked with other partners in designating the coastal foreshore area as a provincial wildlife management area as well. And so it is one of our focal points, and we've got several in the area, including small property like Dudley Marsh up in Arrington. We've got a property north of Qualicum, which is protecting some coastal Douglas fir habitat, and then recently we've got involved with South Winchelsea Island off in Nanoose Bay as well.
Mm-hmm. And what is it that you're conserving on the South Winchelsea Islands in particular?
It's a rare Gary Oak coastal bluff ecosystem, and it's quite unique in terms of these small islets off the coast of Vancouver Island, that it contains Gary Oak rock outcrops, sensitive moss species, beautiful wildflowers, and provides habitat to several species at risk. And it's amazing diversity on such a small spot.
Mm-hmm. How many hectares or acres would that area be, the South Winchelsea's?
About 40 acres in size, yeah.
And that much diversity?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
It's phenomenal there. It's spectacular, actually.
All in our own backyard. We've got this amazing ecosystems and species, That's fantastic. You also, just a little sidetrack, the conservation youth groups that you have.
Yeah, annually every year, one thing that we try and do is to help us deliver on our land management programs, whether it be invasive species, trail maintenance, inventory monitoring. We usually try and engage with youth through universities, and we have annually these summer youth crews throughout the province, and a lot of it is returning students that are interested in the field of environment or biology, wildlife management, and so we, on the island, up to 4 students will be hired, and then throughout the province it varies, but some years the Nature Trust will have up to 30 people or students or young people involved, doing a whole variety of tasks, and we try and make it not just invasive species, because that can be punishing after a while, as Lynn will know with the naturalists. And so, yeah, we try and get them to do inventory and just a whole variety of things to try and help them determine if it's a career or a path they want to pursue. And we have a lot of returning students, and quite a few actually full-time Nature Trust employees now started on these conservation youth crews quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
So it is quite an interesting process, because it's always nice. It kind of reinvigorates, because you see this passion coming from the younger demographic to get out, and it actually, see them motivated. It kind of reinforces what we're trying to do.
And I think the painted turtles are one of the species at risk that...
everybody loves turtles.
Yeah, everybody loves turtles.
Everybody loves turtles. And so in Nanaimo here, we have a property at Buttertubs Marsh that we've been involved with for decades, and it's one of the few spots on Vancouver Island that western painted turtle actually will nest and lay their eggs, and people can actually see them quite close up as they walk around Buttertubs Marsh, and we'd have volunteer groups out there that will get frantic phone calls that the little babies are here, come and see, and so it's pretty neat, and the turtle is one of those species that we try and because it's so rare and there's not many habitats, that we try and provide the habitat for them to have breeding success.
Where do they go in the winter? Do they actually just...
In the mud.
In the mud?
Yeah.
So they...
Yeah, they'll just go down into a state of torpor, if you will. So they'll just,
like
their
a
metabolism will shut down, and they'll just go down, and then once this water temperature changes, they'll reemerge, and you'll see them. We've got some basking logs out, and when the sun comes out, they're like everybody else. They just want to catch some sun and warm up, and so yeah.
I'd like a basking log. I think I need to go to the Parksville Beach for one of those.
Go bury yourself in the mud.
Exactly, and Tom, what are some of the challenges for you as a conservation manager? What are some of the human factors that are challenging for you to deal with on some of these conserved lands?
It's both challenges, and then some of these challenges actually turn into opportunities, and because where some of the challenges rest is either with people not fully understanding the consequences of actions, consequences of just, everybody wants to go outside. These are beautiful properties we have. They're really popular, and I know Lynn can attest to the Englishman Estuary is very busy. And one of the challenges we have is we posted signs and other things, just asking people to respect some of the sensitive ecosystems on the property. And I think people sometimes just want to get out and go see the river, and we feel that sometimes maybe they're not just taking a moment just to pause and go, okay, what makes this area so valuable, intrinsically valuable? It's the natural environment. What can we do to make sure our visit isn't causing any negative impacts? And so we've had some, over the years, just some, trying to help educate people on what the consequences of their behaviors are, whether it be dogs off leash or throwing garbage or cutting down trees or anything like that. And I think it's one of those things that's a slow process to help change behavior. But I do think in the Parksville-Qualicum area, especially, people at this time of year actually will see the value, because with the herring spawn, and there's hundreds of thousands of birds and sea lions and whales, it actually kind of gives them pause to go, this is pretty cool. What can we do to make sure we have this? And so it is a challenge. And the other challenge we have is everybody knows the words of sea level rise and climate change, and it is something that we're struggling with in terms of some of the restoration work we're doing to try and make our estuaries more resilient over time, so these ecosystems can handle any sea level change and climate change. And I think it's something that we need to work with local communities more on to ensure that their communities are resilient as well. So.
Very good. And I know that you work with a lot of naturalist groups,
Yeah.
like the one Lynn represents here
Yeah.
with Arrowsmith, and a lot of partners that way, and a lot of volunteers. And I think when people become engaged and invested in helping to conserve the land, that is also going to be the momentum that keeps this.
Absolutely, and for myself in the what we call the West Coast region is the area I deal with. So Vancouver Island, Central Coast, and Haida Gwaii. There's myself, and I have 2 full-time staff, and we're responsible for delivering a lot of stuff and projects and management, and it wouldn't be possible without our local partners, whether it be local government, other NGO groups, but fundamentally right down to naturalist groups, fishing game clubs, other streamkeeper groups. There's in the Parksville-Qualicum area, we work with the Arrowsmith Naturalists who've been doing tremendous work at the Englishman Estuary every couple of weeks, or maybe it's more, I might be wrong. We'll go out there, it doesn't matter, rain or shine, and we'll come up, there's 30 or 40 volunteers on their hands and knees pulling Scotch broom. And it kind of throws me for a loop sometimes. I'll come around the corner, I'm like, oh my, what are they doing? But with the naturalists, and then we have the Mid-Vancouver Island Habitat Enhancement Society that's done a lot of work. There's the Guardians of Mid-Island Estuaries that do a lot of work in the area. And it's not just Parksville-Qualicum area. We have the same level of engagement all over Vancouver Island. And I think at last count, we had over 60 individual stewardship groups and volunteer groups that we were working with, identifying projects, trying to find funding for the projects, and providing technical support and input on. But honestly, without volunteer groups, we wouldn't be able to achieve all that we've done in terms of projects on the ground.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
And Tom, we've got your website up as well.
Yeah.
On the website, our viewers can find out how they can volunteer to help with the cause, and also how to donate money, time, and also land. If there's a special piece of land in the family that you want to make sure isn't going to go to development, they can also contact you.
And with that, like what we try and do is, I know through the contact numbers, the staff that will respond, they'll forward information out to the regional, like there's regional land managers in the Kootenay, South Okanagan, myself on the island, and we have an individual in Vancouver. And we'll try and respond pretty quickly about where are the local volunteer opportunities. We've had people recently asking, where can I volunteer in Cowichan? Can I volunteer in Parksville-Qualicum? And so, we'll provide the information where they can go out and actually see if they want to do it, or are they interested in just bird watching? There's a lot of different things. And with land donations, we'll go through our process where we'll go and assess the land. And if the Nature Trust, if it doesn't fit within some of our criteria, we do try and put those individual landowners in contact with either local land trusts that might be interested or local governments that might look at it. So, we try and help facilitate, because a lot of families, they get to the position where they want to make a donation, it's really meaningful. And so even if it's an acre or half an acre, it may not fit some of the criteria for the Nature Trust. But we'll assess that, and if there's other opportunities with other local land trusts, we'll try and put these people in contact with them as well to help fulfill that dream of theirs of making a donation.
What a nice legacy
to
leave.
Yeah. We've had some tremendous land property donations throughout BC that, we can't go through the whole list right now, but if people knew where some of these properties came from and the families behind them, I think it would be eye-opening, to be honest.
We could do a whole series just on that, Tom.
Yeah. And a lot of these donors, they quietly go about it. They don't want any fanfare. They just know it's the right thing to do, and it's pretty remarkable, actually. Yeah.
And speaking of remarkable, we've got Lynn Brooks here with the Arrowsmith Naturalists, one of the key partners that work with Tom and his team. Lynn, how did you come to get involved? Was it just personal concerns you saw in the area? How did you come to
Well,
be a
I've always been
volunteer?
interested in all things nature, and many years ago I started out as a biology teacher, so it's
There you
always been
go.
something near and dear to my heart. And we've always been involved in other places with the Audubon Society and other groups. And when we moved here to Vancouver Island, then the first thing we did was find out what was happening as far as naturalist groups, and located the Arrowsmith Naturalists. And it's a wonderful group. And then working with the Brant Wildlife Festival, which is one of the many different volunteer activities our membership's involved in. We have about 140 members. We're doing all sorts of different things. Well, stewardship of the Englishman River Estuary, which is such a lovely place, and estuaries in general are very much at risk. It's an extremely important, they're very productive habitats for wildlife, but they're getting to be few and far between where there hasn't been a marina put in or development happening. And this is a real gem of an estuary, and we're all working together to try and bring it back into its richest wildlife quality, and also for people to enjoy, to see the wildlife that many people came here to see, the nature that's up here. So.
And the Brant Festival is called the Brant Celebration of Nature,
Yes.
I believe.
Yes.
Because you're incorporating other elements, not just the Brant geese. But tell us why the Brant geese are so special, Lynn. They have an incredible migration path that they follow from Mexico all the way up to the Arctic where they nest. And they come through Parksville to the beaches in the Parksville-Qualicum area. Talk to us about how long these migrations are. How many kilometers are they covering?
Well, it's pretty amazing. These birds, they're a type of sea goose, so they always stick near the sea, or the seashore, or over the open ocean. But they come clear from Baja California, and they have to stop at beaches that specifically meet the requirements. There has to be fresh water to drink, there has to be a food source, and some degree of safety so they can rest. It's a long jaunt. They will fly over maybe a couple of weeks period of time, about 5,000 kilometers, going from Mexico, Baja California, Mexico, all the way up here to our beaches, and then over to Eisenbeck Lagoon, which is at the Aleutian Islands, at the southern tip of Alaska, where they have to rest and feed again, and then move on up around, following the outer coast of Alaska, up into the tundra in the northern areas of Canada, where they begin nesting. And then in the autumn, after the nesting is done, they make a reverse trip clear back down again to Baja California.
That's 10,000 kilometers they're traveling in 1 year.
It's a long way to go.
And you mentioned that on the course home, on the downward trip, they're not close to land. They're mostly on the sea.
They return back to Eisenbeck Lagoon, feed up again, and then literally take a flying leap and go straight on down to Baja California. And they go over 1,000 kilometers a day. Wow. And it depends, per hour. They're really moving very rapidly. There's usually a tailwind that helps move them along. And they go straight over the sea and directly down to Baja California. So it's quite a flight. They've been timed by leg bands and seeing the birds come and go. It might take them perhaps 3 days to make that distance from southern Alaska clear down to Baja California.
That's better than some airlines on some days.
Right, it's nonstop.
That's right.
But on the way up, it's really important, and they're sort of the poster child for the whole Pacific Flyway, the migration event, and lots of migration is going on, not only in the air with the birds flying and moving around, but also in the sea with the herring and the salmon and the whales and all sorts of things going on. So there are many, many birds here. We're a great overwintering place for lots of birds. There are hundreds of species that come here, and there are just tens of thousands of birds out all during our winter months. And we have a little bit more protected shores, good food sources, and when they have peace and quiet, it's a great place for feeding and recuperating, and then getting ready for the spring migration event to happen once again.
And the Parksville-Qualicum beaches being such a great feeding area, Tom, is why we don't want dogs on the beach.
Yeah, we had done over the years some research in the area looking at the condition of the birds as they arrived and compared to them when they left, and there was a lot of concern that they weren't putting on enough fat to make the migration. So we had done some disturbance studies and had identified that dogs, whether they're on or off the leash, on some of these beaches were causing these birds to undergo a lot of stress and to fly offshore and miss the feeding event. And a lot of the scientists at Environment Canada were attributing to that, like the natural predator for Brant in the high Arctic or in the tundra is the Arctic fox. And so a lot of these scientists were like, they're really, really sensitive to dogs. And so about 12 years ago, we started to put in some seasonal closures, working with our partners in the province, just to stop having dogs on or off the leash in 4 key areas like Rathtrevor Park, Parksville Bay, then French Creek area, and then Little Qualicum Estuary. And we have a really good partnership with Vancouver Island University students. This is another linkage where it's in their coursework that we have students will go out and monitor and talk to the public about, did you know, and hand out brochures and talk to them about the migration. And the changes that have happened in the condition of the birds since we've done that is been remarkable in terms of how their condition has actually improved tremendously compared to where it was in 2004 is when it hit rock bottom, and the numbers were really suppressed, and it looked really bleak for the birds in the Parksville-Qualicum area. And then we started this program where just trying to change human behavior and more understanding and knowledge, it's actually had a direct consequence and impact on their breeding success, where now we're seeing a few thousand birds showing up, and it is quite remarkable of what a bit of some science behind it, but then volunteer effort and working with students and Arrowsmith Naturalists and the Brant Wildlife Festival can do to actually individual species of a migratory bird.
Tom and Lynn, one small measure, like keeping dogs off the beaches during the migratory season, can make such a huge difference. And it's something we can all do. It's one small step we can all take. So that's really encouraging. And Lynn, you were out, and your volunteers were out doing the latest count of Brant. And I think it was 2,500 in an hour and a half they counted in the Parksville area?
We follow the same route, so we're counting birds, but not in the three major areas. And we're very careful not to double count birds. We have 3 teams that go out at the same time counting in these 3 different sections. And it's just amazing because the Brant, actually there were some over winter this year, and a few of them are seeming to stay here. But as we do the counts, it started out in early February, maybe 74 or 100, a couple hundred birds, a few hundred, up to 1,000. And this last time there were about 2,500 birds in the last count. And we count about once a week for about 10 weeks. And it's really interesting. Also, I would like to say, I think it's great. People seem to be realizing and living more consciously in the environment here. And we've seen fewer dog on the beach events. People are aware of it. And when someone does, it's like people just say, hey, what have you got your dog on the beach? So people, I don't think anyone wants to hurt the animals. They just don't realize.
Right.
But as the general public realizes, wow, this is really important for these birds. It's life and death. They're not out there playing.
Yeah.
So that's been a good change. I think people are beginning to realize and help out.
Wonderful. Now, Lynn, the festival is on now. It runs for about 6 weeks from mid-March through the end of April. It's sort of at the height right now with the number of birds coming in. How many birds are we expecting during this time of year?
The maximum that we've seen over a period of years is about maybe 20,000 of the Brant geese that come through Vancouver Island in our area. They're different, slightly different flyways within the Pacific Flyway. So at this point, last year we counted about 11,000 birds, but there are others that come and go that we miss, that we are unable to count.
And some, like you have on our display table here, this one here, Lynn, is called a what?
Well, this is an American widgeon. And there are literally tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of birds of all sorts here. And I brought an assortment here for you to see from the North Island Wildlife Recovery Center. Let us use these birds that have been donated, the taxidermied birds that have been donated over the years. This is an American widgeon. It's a male, and it's a lovely little duck, and they're all over. They're fairly common to see. And they're little squeaky, talky ducks. They're really interesting to listen to out there. And this type of duck is what's called a dabbling duck. And they upend, and they're out, they're eating sea lettuce and eelgrass, and if there's other types of plant material, and if they're in fresh water, they'll be eating different types of pond plants. They're just a lovely little duck. And this other duck, this is called a diving duck. This is actually a study mount, but this is called a long-tailed duck for obvious reasons. And they can dive down to 200 feet deep in search of their prey, which is not vegetable, as in that case of the American widgeon, but this one eats mollusks and crustaceans. It's got a little heavier duty beak, but it will dive on down a couple hundred feet and then swim around grabbing the crustaceans and mollusks and come back up.
Look how streamlined it is.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect for diving. Yeah.
Really nice markings.
And
then another type of bird, different from these folks, this is a loon. And this is the common loon, and it's in the summer breeding plumage. The males and females look the same, whereas this is a male widgeon. This could be a male or a female. And the loons are fish eaters. And they dive down. The common dive is about 45 seconds, but they can stay, say there's an eagle or some predator nearby, they can stay underwater for up to 3 minutes. So they're really adapted to aquatic life. They're very quick and sharp, but it's fish that they're after. Another migrating bird.
This handsome dude down here.
This handsome fellow. is actually an extremely important bird. The turkey vulture, they are ubiquitous in the United States and down in Mexico. They live there year-round, but there are some that migrate up here into Canada, just in the southern part of Canada, and they're back now, and it's always exciting to see the turkey vultures back. When seeing them up flying around, they're nearly as large, about the same size as an eagle. They have a different wing shape. They've got feathers on the tips. Sorry, the primary feathers are out, and you can see the difference between the way they look in an eagle. But their important role is to clean up dead stuff. Their carcasses, imagine if there were things laying around. They have a very high tolerance, very highly acidic digestive tract, so they're able to eat about anything, and they do. But they do have some degree of taste. They only eat things usually about 3 days worth of dead.
Wonderful.
So they're interesting birds, very intelligent and well adapted to do what they do to stay alive.
Thank you for sharing those with us, Lynn. And we haven't had a chance yet to really get into some of the activities happening at the festival, but we have the Brant Festival website on our show tonight, and people can learn a little more about the events there. So we wish you really good luck with the festival this year. It's arts, crafts, carvings, bird watching, bird counts, all kinds of wonderful things going on.
Hamilton Marsh tour,
yes, tours. So we encourage our viewers to get out there and partake in the festival. So Lynn and Tom, thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate it. Thank you for all the work that you're doing to help conserve our incredible biodiversity we have and enjoy here on Vancouver Island. And long may it continue. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again next time on Coast Connections. Thank you.